And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The one gaming podcast that every gamer wants to listen to. Welcome to the SNS Show. Starring your host, Sumotacular, and co-host, the Smed. Are you ready to talk games? Call in, tweet at us, let us know, and let the show begin.
Hello everyone, this is Sumotacular coming at you, episode 2 of the SNS Show. As always, I am joined by my esteemed co-host, the Smed Head. Smed, say hello to the folks.
How's it going, Sumo? Glad to be back. What's the topic for today?
Today, we are going to be talking Primarchs. Who's back? Who should come back? Oh, it's going to be a great topic. A great conversation. So, I already know your favorite Primarch, but I'm going to let you take it over here for just a minute and go ahead and talk to the folks and tell them about your personal favorite. Talk about how he should come back. Go ahead, Smed. What you got?
Well, it's a little hard to actually pick your favorite Primarch because they all have so many cool abilities and yet so many fatal flaws. But of course, Leman Russ is my number one. I mean, how can you not love a guy who loves to eat, drink, and fight?
This is very, very true.
I mean,
and not just drink, eat, and fight. This dude is just absolutely ferocious. I mean, he is, as far as the lore goes, he has canine DNA mixed in with his own. He is a space wolf.
absolutely. He is the epitome of space wolf. I mean, and you're talking about a guy who out-ate and out-drank the Emperor himself.
Yes.
It took the Emperor beating him in a fight to gain his respect.
Very, very true. This is exactly right. I mean, and that whole series of events with the challenges that Russ put to the Emperor, it's pretty epic, and you can kind of draw a parallel with it to one of the old Norse legends where Thor had to complete some challenges for a few, like a giant dining hall of giants to prove he was worthy of some gift they were supposed to give him. And they tried to be sneaky about it, but he still wound up beating them and eventually killing them because they're dirty, dirty, filthy giants, and that's not a good thing in Norse mythology.
No doubt. Well, like I said, on the subject of Russ, I mean, everybody knows, he disappeared into the eye, chasing after what he was hoping to find, like the Tree of Life, to save the Emperor, to get him off the throne. And now with the return of the 13th Company and with, all the Rune Priests telling all the new Wolf Lords like Logan and all of them, the wolf time is here, and I think it's an easy way to bring in Russ into the 41st century.
Oh yeah. Definitely, and it's really, it's really time for the Loyalist Primarchs to come back. Right now, we're at 2-1 Chaos to Loyalist Primarchs. So, Gilliman's a little outnumbered, and I cannot think of anyone better to come back right now than Leman Russ to aid his loyal brother. Whether he's undergone a wolfen transformation, whether he can revert back and forth, I think either way would be really cool.
No, I definitely think he would have to undergone the wolfen transformation. It's just he was probably the one who could control it. And there's rumors that on Harold Deathwolf's ship, the leader of the Wolfen that came back, he's never left Deathwolf's ship. And they said he is the biggest of the Wolfen people to come out of the eye that they have found, and he won't speak to anybody. So they're thinking he's hiding among the Space Wolf fleet, waiting for his time.
Right. Right. That's it's really a scary thought too, that there could be a Primarch already back and amongst the Imperium besides Gilliman, and he's really just kind of hiding out, kind of biding his time. Maybe he's in the eye when he was going after the Tree of Life. Maybe he came across some things that have kind of shaken his faith, kind of given him a heads up on what the Imperium has become in the 41st millennium, or I guess now the 42nd millennium. And it's probably got him a little nervous because I mean, if I would think that in just if I were to put myself in Lehman's place, if a Primarch could fall to this kind of affliction, what does that say about all the Marines descended from him? What kind of fear would that put into the Imperium at large, and especially the Inquisition?
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Like I said, bringing him back, though, as I see it, would be an easy segue and a very, very powerful character to bring in for the Imperium. Because like you were saying, we are outnumbered, and not only are we outnumbered, they are demon Primarchs coming in on Chaos' side. So they are twice as strong as the original versions. And I'll go ahead and jump to the next one, I believe, who is also be very easy, and another one of my favorites, and I know he's one of yours, is Vulcan.
Oh,
The man who cannot die.
absolutely. The perpetual Primarch. And oh man. Yeah, I can really go off on some Vulcan. Yeah, if he winds up coming back, they talk about this in a show we've watched a little bit of. I've watched a lot of it. I'm a little bit obsessed with it. But it's by Brother Alphabusa. It's If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device, and I will plug it anytime because it's fantastic. If you're a 40K fan, you absolutely have to check that series out. It is hilarious. They do a great
hilarious.
They do a great job parodying just how ridiculous the Warhammer 40,000 universe is. But they have him in there. The artifacts that are laid down in the Tome of Fire, which is a kind of sacred book that Vulcan supposedly penned. And
right.
It gives clues as to the location of these artifacts, but not the entirety of where they can be located. And so the Salamanders kind of believe that if they find all of them, then Vulcan will come back to them, which is kind of silly. And again, they lampooned it, and Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device. It was just more or less he was waiting around, and when they found all the artifacts, it kind of just gave him a good excuse to come out of hiding. But
I think he would be great. Another one that would be really easy would be Takati Khan. He took off.
Yes.
Nobody knows his whereabouts because he didn't trust anybody. He didn't know who had turned and who hadn't, and really just not exactly tucked tail and ran, but went into hiding. And there's no telling what he's figured out or who he's came in contact with since then.
Right. And for those who may not be aware, Jagatai Khan, or Jagati, however you want to pronounce it, we'll just say Khan. He was kind of a loner Primarch. It wasn't that he didn't get along with his brothers. It was more along the lines of Chagoris, or Planus Mundus, his homeworld, had instilled in him such a different set of values and beliefs to the rest of his brothers that he just didn't feel at home working with them. You know,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
There was one battle during the Horus Heresy where the Ultramarines were kind of getting it handed to them by this Xenos enemy. And they made a request for reinforcements. And because of the difficulty in keeping track of the White Scars, they wound up reinforcing the Ultramarines, and it was only like 3 or 4 companies where a minimum of 10 had been requested. So when everything was said and done, the Ultramarines and the White Scars won that conflict, but it was at the cost of casualties that the Ultramarines found unacceptable. And whereas the White Scars thought, oh, it was a great fight, you know, you had everything going on, we rode with honor, and we fought with honor, and we won with honor. And
it's just so funny that, you know, the Ultramarines are the ones saying, you know, it's unacceptable numbers, except we have the largest faction, you know, army in the Imperium. No big deal.
Right.
Oh, by the way, we created Primarchs behind your back, you know.
Well, I bet Gilliman's kind of got egg on his face. Yeah, I wrote this awesome book to make sure that nothing like the Horus Heresy would ever happen again. But to fight chaos, we kind of need that kind of strength. Oh. Yeah, that was... But, that to me just goes to show that, you know, the Primarchs are not infallible. They are demigods in every sense of the word. I mean, they are almost
absolutely.
godlike.
Absolutely.
And they are expressions of humanity taken to their extreme. But they're not perfect. They're fallible. They're vulnerable. They can be killed. They can fall to hubris, desire, things like that. And all of them have their weaknesses. And that was one of the bad things about the Horus Heresy, was it preyed on those weaknesses to really mess them up.
AKA Ferris Manus.
Yeah.
Poor guy. Man. I mean, literally got ripped to pieces.
Yep. Gotta have them trophies, man.
I mean, and speaking of trophies, Rogel Dorn would be a great one to bring back in. But the body was never found, only the hand.
This is very true.
And the hand was left for a reason, because he's the one that before he killed Alfarius, he cut his hands off.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I believe it was left for a reason. So I think they're keeping him hidden, or he survived when he attacked that Alpha Legion ship somehow.
Yes. And personal opinion, I think it would actually be a benefit to the lore and everything if Dorn came back and he was a bit half crazed, you know, almost wild from the definite torture he probably went through at the hands of the Chaos Marines and his own brothers, probably, in some instances.
Oh, definitely. I mean, just look at Vulcan when he had to deal with Kurz.
Mm-hmm.
Kurz killed him hundreds and hundreds of times, and it just tried every way he could and could not do it. But then that one day he messed up and gave him his hammer.
Yeah,
He told him, I took off the teleport beacon, so have at it. Well, Vulcan ended up beating the shit out of Kurz. And then saying, oh, by the way, you didn't. This is my hammer. Teleports right out of there and ends up falling in on McCrag. And at the same time on McCrag is when they thought Terra was already fallen, and Sanguinus and Gilliman and Lionel and all of them were already there trying to start a new Imperium. They had already elected Sanguinus as the new emperor.
Yeah, Imperium Secundus, totally not heretical. Gilliman would never do such a thing. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and Sanguinus is like, no, you know what? I'm gonna go make sure Terra's still there.
Yeah, that was while it wasn't the worst decision, I think it was a little premature on Gilliman's part.
Yeah, no
Good
doubt
good
about it.
plan, wrong time to execute it.
Yeah, that's a little fast.
Which really makes you wonder though. You know, Gilliman is supposed to be a tactical theory genius. You know, the way he taught his sons, the way he taught the Ultramarines was you have two options in front of you. Always find the theoretical, always find the practical. The theoretical can be as outlandish as you want it to be, but balance it with the practical. We can crash this ship, theoretical. We're going to have to take it and blow it up from the inside, practical. You know, things like that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what pulls me away from him. That's why I love Lehman Russ, because Lehman Russ is like, I don't trust teleportation. We're going to put a bunch of Terminators in torpedoes, shoot us at the ship. We'll handle the rest.
Exactly.
Which they literally did.
Absolutely. And you know, it's really awesome. One of the things I love about Warhammer, and especially about the Space Marines, is you can really see just how much of an impact the teachings and the mannerisms of the Primarchs have made on their sons. Because, and a lot of people don't realize this, and this is why the whole female Space Marine things kind of aggravates me a little bit. People calling for them and such. You can't really have female Space Marines unless there'd been a female Primarch, which has not been said, but Malcador the Sigillite, he jokingly said to the Emperor, if only you'd made them female, talking about the Primarchs.
Right.
As far as being able to control them and things like that.
Still, like we talked about before, we still don't know who was the second and who was the 11th.
And that's another big thing. And I don't think we'll ever learn, which is probably a good thing in my opinion, because it allows people to make their own chapters. Maybe, there's some dark secret, and it turns out this chapter's, a descendant of the original Second Legion, all that kind of stuff, which is neat. It's fun for people, when they want to do stuff like that. But and I was talking to you about this off podcast a little while ago with Lehman Russ and Horus and one of the missing Primarchs, the unnamed, being the first three discovered.
Right.
Odds are it was Lehman who acted as the Emperor's executioner in that instance. And
yes, it was mentioned that Russ carries that.
Yeah.
And he's not one, to talk about anything like that. He's just one to boast about how good he is at fighting.
Right.
He's arrogant, and which is what makes him Lehman Russ.
Yes.
Or should I say Lehman of Russ?
Yes. Lehman of the Russ. Big ass tribe.
I mean, when you pick up Magnus the Red, the biggest of all the Primarchs, over your head and break him over your back, or break his back over your knee, that's saying something. Of course, that's all Horus's fault.
Yes.
He kind of tricked him because he knew if he were to do that, Magnus would turn to the Chaos side and he would have him. But Magnus has also showed up, in all the books, helping the Imperial, like when Vulcan had the spear in his heart and was sedated, he showed up and told him what had to be done to bring his brother back, and then disappeared again. Like, he still cares. It's just he was pushed to the very edge and had to make the decision, die and kill, all his, brothers and everything, or keep them alive and join Chaos. And he ultimately had to make that decision to go with Zinch.
Yes. And Magnus, let's talk about probably the most tragic. Well, one of the most. There's a couple of others that are really tragic as well. Magnus is a character that people can easily sympathize with, even though he is a demigod, even though he is so far removed from humanity on a personal level. You can empathize and sympathize with what he had to do to save his sons, to save his legion. And he was, at the start of the burning of Prospero, he was fine with letting everyone die. He didn't want to fight them. He had ordered his men to stand down. Some of them obviously defied his order, and tried to protect the civil.
They were seeing all their brothers die right in front of them, because the Space Wolves were enraged and told to kill.
Yes. And that was another thing, it talks about in the Horse Heresy book. They didn't just attack the military presence of Prospero. They were also slaughtering the civilian population of Prospero.
Everybody.
They were killing everyone.
That's why it's called the burning of Prospero, because they were told to destroy the planet.
And it was ultimately stuff like that kind of made Magnus just snap. And he decided, no, we're not going to die today. We're not going out like this.
And he put up a fight against Lehman. He did. Using all his psychic abilities. I mean, Lehman was beat up, but he gritted his teeth and he got that rage.
Yep.
And then ultimately lifted him up, broke his back on his knee.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, he had to choose: do I die here, or do I save my sons?
Yep. And as he lay dying, he called out to Tzeentch and offered up his entire legion and himself to Tzeentch's service, and he whisked them away, just snapped them out of reality into the Eye of Terror. And
that's it.
I think we have the obligatory mention here. Magnus did punch Lehman in the chest hard enough to cause one of his hearts to rupture, so it wasn't...
he was the biggest Primarch before he became a demon, so...
Yeah. Lehman breaking his back... absolutely amazing feat. Like, even when you think of the strength of a Primarch, for a Primarch of Lehman's size, and Lehman really, he wasn't that big as a Primarch. He was far taller than any human, and he was taller than any Space Marine. But in comparison to,
I would say 60% of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was on the smaller side. He was a brawler, though.
Yes.
I mean, that's what he did best.
Yes. He's kind of like the wiry dude at the bar that you hang out with who, doesn't really start fights, but if one breaks out, there's no keeping him out of it, and he's gonna get 5 or 6 people before he ever gets drug under.
I feel like you're taking a shot at me here, Sumo.
I don't think anybody can call you the little guy in any situation.
Well, you said wiry, so.
Well, you're wiry, but also extremely tall, so it's kind of terrifying, I'll just say this: I after having seen your dad and everything, and known him for so long, and seeing the bulk that he can put on, if you ever decided to hit the gym, you'd be like Halfter Bjornsson, the mountain off of Game of Thrones. It's like, I'm here to break you.
I will destroy. But back on the Primarchs, as we were talking, some that you can sympathize with. Angron.
Yes.
Angron he has a reason to be as angry as he is, besides the nails. He refused to go with the Emperor. He was on the last, battle on his planet, fighting with his people, about to get killed with them, and the Emperor just took him and not the rest of his people.
Yes.
And left them all to die. And he always carried that on his back, and he hated it. So when he had the chance to say, okay, if I go a horse, I can pretty much do whatever I want.
Yes, this is exactly right.
Like I said, I understand every bit of that. He wanted to stay there and fight to the death and die with his people.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the emperor wouldn't let it happen, but he just saved him and not his people.
Yes.
And he always hated the emperor for that reason.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not only hated the emperor, hated anything that reminded him of the emperor, which was a big thing with his sons, the World Eaters, previously the Warhounds.
Yeah, because they were telling him not to give him the nails,
Mm-hmm.
and they were trying to remove them, and he pretty much said, "No, fuck off."
And
I mean,
you know, it was pretty epic. It describes in the book where he kind of comes into everything about him pretty much slaughtering every captain, every sergeant, every centurion that was brought before him, trying to get him to lead the legion, until Karn, who personally my favorite world eater of all time,
and is the only person that Angron will talk to.
yes,
Everyone else, he just kills.
yes, and he was beating the crap out of Karn, and the whole time Karn would just slowly stand back up and go right back to telling Angron about the battle honors that the Warhounds had won. That, what slaughter they had managed to achieve on this planet, how they had broken this tyrannical regime on this other system. That just going off this list of battle honors, and that's ultimately what kind of made Angron kind of realize, maybe you're not weak. Maybe there's hope for you all. Maybe you can now be, my followers, not my equals like my brothers and sisters back on New Syria, but my followers for sure.
I mean, he definitely got Angron's respect, which nobody else ever has.
No, and that's why Angron made him his personal equerry.
That's it.
He became his right hand man.
And you want to talk about the strongest Primarch? I mean, he literally held up a Warhound Titan from stepping on Lorgar, which, personal opinion, I wish he would have just let Lorgar die.
Yes, absolutely.
But I mean, you're just talking about just brute strength. Angron is probably by far the strongest of all the Primarchs.
Oh, I would not argue with that at all. Not at all. And let's talk about something with Angron, and it makes him even more tragic. Each of the Primarchs kind of had a special ability. For Vulcan, it was his perpetuality. For Russ, it was his ability to kind of tap into the bestial nature that he had.
Right, his keen senses.
Mm-hmm. For Angron, it was the ability to absorb the pain of others and take it into himself.
And turn it into more power.
Yes. And
which the nails did help on that.
Yes, they did. But they kind of twisted and perverted it. That was the bad thing. Instead of him being the angel he was meant to be, and it kind of talks about the Emperor wanting him to be more or less like kind of a super medic, almost. He was supposed to be something of mercy, not of blood and destruction that he became. And that really, it makes his fall even sadder, and it really shows how screwed up everything got with the Primarchs being cast out to all the different worlds by chaos.
Right, and if anybody listening, who doesn't know too much about, the Horus Heresy and Angron, he lived the life of, what's the name of that show?
Spartacus.
That's exactly what he was, except he was taken away and wasn't able to die with his people.
Yep.
I mean, you got to sympathize with that. I get his anger. I would be angry. Hence the name Angron.
Absolutely. And it was, it's very, very sad. I mean, when you read the stuff and you think about what being taken away really meant for the people that Angron had fought with, you know, the Eaters of Cities, his own personal army of brothers and sisters that had escaped the gladiator pits, had escaped from slavery and taken on all these different armies over time and absolutely crushed them. And it took all the different city-states on the world of Nuceria joining their military forces together in one last battle to finally get them. I mean, and Angron, that was the thing. Angron was ready to die. He was like, this is the way I want to go
The
out.
Emperor had came to him beforehand and was like, look, if you stay here, you're going to die. And Angron told him, I know, but I'm going to die with my people. And the Emperor teleported him out as the battle was about to take off. And like I said, he's had that on his back the entire time. And I completely get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly think to bring him in to the new 8th edition 40K would be an awesome Demon Prince Angron model, even though it's not Imperial, because Imperial, they need some Primarchs coming back.
Mm-hmm.
But the Angron model would be awesome.
Yes.
I mean, he would be a beast.
Well, and that's the thing. It really wouldn't be too difficult to make him, because the way they've described him is basically like a bloodthirster greater demon of Khorne with dreadlocks because of the butcher's nails implants that are in his head.
Right. And slightly bigger.
Yes. Yes.
And,
with a very skeletal face.
And if you hadn't seen the new bloodthirster models, he's a little bigger than that.
Yeah, he will be huge. When they bring him back, he is going to be huge. And he was one of the larger Primarchs anyways.
Yes, absolutely. There was very few that were bigger than him. It was what I would say Sanguinius was probably a little taller, and Magnus.
Yeah, Magnus had a little bit of height and a little bit of bulk on him. Vulcan was coming in about the same size. And that really, Vulcan was bulkier, but he was maybe an inch or two shorter than Angron. But that's because Vulcan was, a freaking blacksmith. So, if you've ever swung a hammer for for anything more than 6 or 7 hours, you gonna grab some muscle there. It's gonna happen.
Oh, no doubt about it.
You're gonna get hefty real quick. But Angron, such a tragic figure, and another one of the Chaos Primarchs, the traitor Primarchs, that was very tragic in my personal opinion, is Conrad Kurz.
Oh, another one of my top favorites. I'm not gonna lie.
Fantastic background. Go ahead and describe him for us, Chase or Smedhead.
Well, to be blunt, he is a Punisher Batman with superhuman abilities. I mean, this guy was he literally ruled his entire planet through fear itself. If you broke the law, he killed you. There was no in between. And his downfall was everybody he touched, he saw their death. When he met the Emperor, he saw what happened to him. And Rogel Dorn and Fulgrim was with them at the time, and he shook both their hands and saw their deaths. Well, he didn't see Dorn's death, but he saw Dorn's hand missing, and he saw Fulgrim turn into the snake demon he supposedly is now.
Right.
And like I said, he always had that. It kind of drove him crazy. I mean, he was able to break out of Terra's most highly guarded prison by the most, tactical people of Fulgrim's top tier champions guarding him, and was able to escape and get out of there. He really didn't even join the Chaos side. He just joined his side.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the first thing he did when he left Terra? He went back to his old planet, blew it up.
Yep.
I mean, the guy was insane, but man, like I said, he's a Punisher Batman. He has no remorse for what he does, and he knows what's coming.
And that was another thing, and you can see, like with Angron, the different powers and the different things that the different Primarchs were supposed to represent. Kurz was supposed to be the Emperor's justice. He was supposed to be the lawbringer. He was supposed to be the judge.
Correct.
For the Imperium. He was going to be their lex, their law. Unfortunately, the planet he landed on was a world that was tidally locked, which means that one side was constantly bathed in harsh sunlight and completely unlivable unless you were deep underground, and the other side was always shrouded in darkness. It was always night. And if you've ever been in a big city late at night, you know how dangerous that is. Nighttime brings out the worst elements to do their thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, before he even came to power on
Nostromo?
Nostromo, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Before he even was thought about came to power, he was, people were telling their kids stories about him.
Yes.
He lived on the streets, and he didn't just kill bad people. He killed anybody who got in his way because he was, having to steal food and everything else. And then when he got big enough, he finally figured out, you know what? I'm just going to take over.
Yes, because
and if nobody listens to me, well, I'm just going to kill them. Because everybody he touched, he saw their death. He knew if they died, who killed them. Most of the time, it was him.
Yes, yes, and that was the thing. He had this innate desire for justice, for law and order. Unfortunately, without the guiding hand of the Emperor, that law and order came in the form of the law of the jungle. Nature red and tooth and claw, Yep. The strongest rule, the weakest are ruled. And that was the thing. And he didn't really steal food so much as, he did his best not to break his own rules. He didn't want to be a hypocrite. But he would straight up eat the people he killed.
Yes.
And I know people will probably be freaked out about that if you've never been into the lore of 40K. It's actually kind of a common occurrence with Space Marines. They eat people because it is there is an organ that they are implanted with, the omophagia, which allows them, when they eat a part of another being, to get their memories, essentially. So
Correct.
If you need the code to a secure vault that even a melt-a-gun or a melt-a-charge can't get through, well, you eat a bit of the brain of the highest ranking person that you just killed, and boom, you've got the code. Things like that. It's, pseudoscience woo, but it is really cool in the 40K universe.
It is, but like I said, doing that so many times and seeing so many futures is what ultimately drove him crazy.
Yes.
And nobody believed him. And that's the reason why he knew that assassin was coming to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And he let him kill him to prove his point that he knew what was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a crazy concept. It really is, because, like I said, the guy was insane, but man, you talking just furious.
Oh yes,
he was like the bad guy of another Primarch I'm about to bring up, Corax.
Yes, absolutely, and it's really an interesting parallel between the two. Kurz and the Night Lords were born out of darkness, just as Corvus Corax was. But while the Night Lords used ambush tactics and used the darkness to sow fear and discord within their enemies and to break them psychologically, Corvus Corax and his sons, the Raven Guard, used ambush tactics and things like that to eliminate critical supply lines, eliminate important armored columns, things like that. They would spring out of nowhere, do their damage, and then get out of there
without ever even being seen.
Yes. And that is terrifying on its own. The Night Lords took it further because they would descend on that suddenly wrecked armored column, grab everyone up, skin them, and then put their flayed corpses, like hanging upside down by their ankles from the wreckage and stuff, just to send a message of, we're here, we rule the night, surrender or die.
And they did that before the Horus Heresy.
Yes.
That's how they were.
Yes. Yeah. Nostromo was pretty much full of almost nothing but psychotics. Simply because of how brutal the world was. The fact that there was honestly more people than food to feed them. And the ruling class before Conrad Kurz came to power as the Night Haunter were very wealthy. They had a lot of the resources. They felt safe and secure, kept away from the rabble, and they played them off of each other. They kept them in check by never sending Arbites in or, their own police forces in to keep the citizenry safe.
Right. They just let them kill themselves and just, kept their hand out of it.
Yes.
Pretty much.
And they were the ones that Kurz brutalized the most when he came to power, when he started killing his way up the ranks of the planet. But yeah, Corvus Corax, when he came into the picture, he crash landed on a moon of a planet known as Kievar. And this moon, I think it was like Lycosa or something like that.
It was a moon of deliverance, was it not?
It was, yes. It was named Deliverance after he took it. And then when they went down, when he took his personal army down and overthrew the technocracy of Kievar, that was when he was the ruler of that system at that point. And he basically did it with a slave army. He also has some parallels with Angron as well. Deliverance was a moon where the technocracy would send political prisoners, low-grade criminals, petty theft and stuff like that, stealing food to survive. And these were the kind of people who found Corvus Corax when he crash-landed on Deliverance. And they raised him to be a good person. They taught him mercy, but they also taught him how to strike from the shadows, how to effortlessly attack and then slip back into the darkness, never leaving a trace.
Oh yes, the battles that he's in just on the Horus Heresy, that he's hardly ever seen going through the battlefield, and yet he's killing 20 Marines, at a time that he decides to pop out, and nobody can see him or nobody knows where he came from or where he went.
Yes.
The next thing you know, you look behind you, there's 10 more dead Marines, and you have no idea.
Yes.
I mean, the Raven Guard are phenomenal at that, and even one of his captains that escaped Isfahan on a salamander ship took on Lucius, the Eternal, who is one of the best swordsmen in the universe of 40K, and bested him. And he was taught by Corvus Corax. And that says enough of itself right there.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, he killed Lucius. And Lucius is, like I said, if obviously not the best swordsman, but one of the best swordsmen. I mean, Fulgrim holds him to very high regard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
the Emperor's Children feed on, they cut themselves to feel better.
yes.
And the fact that he was able to kill him, like I said, he X'd him with 2 swords. It was brutal.
straight decap, man. What's really amazing is that Fabius Bile was actually able to resurrect him.
Yeah, I know, right?
that
I
really
know.
that
Well, I
really
mean,
says something.
speaking of Bile, I mean, that's another thing going around is that he's trying to, he's gotten pieces or DNA of all of the Primarchs. He's trying to clone them, which is another easy way to bring in, even some of the dead Primarchs that are missing back into the game of 40K and not just, in the books of the Horus Heresy.
Yes. I've actually given some thought to that, and I think we discussed it at one point where, that would probably be a really epic campaign, a really epic battle setting for 40K now, just like Vigilus is at the moment. An assault on Fabius Bile's world. Maybe some legion of Chaos Marines is giving him shelter while he works on some kind of project for them, and on the side he's working on his own thing, cloning the Primarchs, perfecting them, trying to get them as close to the originals as possible. And then there's a raid by Gilliman and all of his Primaris Marines and the Ultramarines, and you can throw the Blood Angels in there, Salamanders, Imperial Fists, whatever you want. And maybe they discover that room, and the Primarchs have the memories.
Well, not only that, they could discover the room, and like we were saying, they could discover the original Rogel Dorn in stasis.
Yes,
he's just been taking DNA from him, trying to make a clone, but for their benefit.
Right. A Dorn he can corrupt.
Of course, and like we already said, everybody got a piece of Ferrus Manus, so we know his DNA's out there. I mean, he was literally torn limb by limb by limb.
Yeah.
Everybody got a trophy.
Yeah, and that was that's a really good segue right there. Let's talk about Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus, because when they were recovered very, very close together. And
yes, absolutely. They actually, the hammer Ferrus uses and the sword Fulgrim uses, they built to see who could build the better weapon. And both of them said that each other's weapons was better, and they couldn't decide, so they both just gave them to each other, and that's what they fought with.
That's right.
And sadly, that's what ultimately put him down.
Yep. Yeah, the very blade that Fulgrim forged and that his brother took as a gift, and one of the things that bonded them so closely with a love that very few of the other Primarchs shared for any other Primarch.
Right.
It was ultimately the thing that cut his head off.
Yep.
When Fulgrim and Ferrus fought, and that was a really heartbreaking and depressing scene. Fulgrim begging Ferrus, please join me, come with me and join Horus. We don't have to fight. We can go against the Emperor. He's a tyrant. He's a traitor to all of mankind. He wants to dominate, not to guide. And
Ferrus told him no.
Yep.
And that shows what kind of man he was, what he stood for. And some little part of me thinks that, because he was so mechanical about everything, like we'd spoken of before, it's very possible that they could, take what maybe some memory bank that he had or a piece that they found left, something that I'm sure he had like a backup plan in case he did die, into this dreadnought figure, you know what I mean, or an old Contemptor Dread or something that still has his memories and his sort of voice. It wouldn't be the same Ferrus Manus though, but that would be really cool to me.
Right. I think that would actually be a really cool way to bring him back, because a clone Ferrus, it talks about one of the...
That's pushing it, because he's too much of a machine, before he died.
Yes, very, very analytical. not really given to emotion unless it was something that would be a strength to him. Because that's what Ferrus Manus was all about. It was personal strength. Weakness can't be tolerated because weakness destroys more than strength ever will.
Exactly, and flesh was weakness.
Well, that was one of the things that was really interesting. If it could augment your strength, he was all about it. But he was actually troubled by his sons, the Iron Hands, which it's really funny to me that the guy's name is Ferrus Manus, which is Iron Hands, and his chapter is the Iron Hands. Yeah, the Iron Hands who have iron hands follow Iron Hands into iron-handed battle. But he saw that a lot of his sons in the Legion were taking and lopping off their hands, their arms, their legs to try to get closer to their Primarch, who just had forearms covered in, like a living metal, kind of a Necron tier kind of deal.
Right.
But he was troubled by it. It kind of made him nervous, and he had intended to talk to his Legion about it and talk to his higher ups, his warsmiths, or not warsmiths, his
like his Tech Marines or
well, it was, they had a weird name for them in the clan.
It's their own, I would say, apothecary, but that's not what they're called.
Yeah, I think Iron Fathers is what they're called.
Yes, I believe that's it.
But to talk to his Iron Fathers and try to get them to ease up and put more faith in their own physicality, in their own strength of will over, okay, the flesh is weak, let me replace it with a mechanical bionic, and then I'll be stronger. It's like, no, flesh can mend, flesh can strengthen over time. The mechanical will only break. It cannot repair itself. It cannot heal.
Right.
From
and
damage.
Like you're saying, they were doing it on purpose. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't his point of why he was doing it.
Right.
He was still flesh underneath all his mechanical stuff.
Yeah.
He had replaced a lot with with metal, especially like you were saying, it's like Necron metal. It's living.
Yes.
But it wasn't a purposeful thing. It was to better himself.
That's exactly right.
And with his company, they were just, like you were saying, chopping off hands and arms just to get a bigger, better mechanical hand that they have no feeling in.
Yeah.
And he wasn't having it, but sadly he didn't stay around to see it all happen.
Yeah, because, after Isvan 5, we're going to go back and have a real talk. Meanwhile, 4 hours later.
Yeah.
But, and Fulgrim. Let's talk about Fulgrim a minute, because his is a little bit sad, too. In fact, other than maybe Mortarion.
I'll just go ahead and say it. Fulgrim is a flagrant asshole.
Yes, absolutely.
He has to be perfect. And he hated Sanguinus because he was loved more. And Sanguinus was honestly more perfect than Fulgrim. And he thrived for perfection. And the more he thrived for it, the worse it became. Especially when he turned to Slaanesh. That ruined everything.
Yes, that was not a good event that happened. Now, it wasn't entirely his fault. His fall to Chaos and to Slaanesh. Fighting the lair on their home world and finding the lair blade and the demon trapped inside of it. It already had started to work on him. He was possessed for a while. When he fought Fulgrim, he kind of broke his possession, but the demon was kind of still in the back of his mind saying, hey, there's this guy you really need to meet.
You're pretty, but you could be beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he thrived for. He thrived for perfection to impress his father.
Yes.
And the more he thrived for it, the more the emperor didn't like it, to be honest. I mean, because he tried too hard.
Yes. Yes. And he was looking at censure from the emperor, much like the word bearers had been censored. Now Fulgrim's traits were very, very, very strongly passed on to his sons, and all Space Marines are like mini clones of their Primarch fathers. When
Right.
they
They all get the same gene seed and everything.
and it kind of overwrites their base DNA. For instance, like Blood Angels with Sanguinius. Sanguinius, he had blonde hair, very statuesque, kind of like the old, like the Renaissance style Greek statues and everything, like
Right.
David.
Yeah, that's exactly how would you would picture him if you haven't seen drawings or anything of him.
Yes,
With
just
very beautiful angelic wings.
yes, enormous too.
Oh, ginormous.
But his sons, the Blood Angels, they are very often mutated. They tend to have radiation burns, scarring, things like that. They tend to be darker haired. But when they were granted the gene seed of Sanguinius and the changes started to overtake them, they started to look like him. The scar tissue would heal over. They became taller, stronger, more well built. They would become handsome, very, very, very well sculpted facial features, and
Yes.
their hair would turn blonde. Every single one of them would wind up with blonde hair, just like Sanguinius. So
And
again,
I think that had a lot to do with the rituals that they all did before battle as well, of the drinking of the blood and everything, because he knew they all had that flaw.
yes,
But after battle, like you said, when they're healing up, or they're in the apothecarium getting fixed and everything else, they always came out better.
yes,
Like you said, they always came out looking more like him and more like him and more like him every
Yes.
time. Especially if you look at all his like top captains that he had, they were all pretty much mini versions of him.
yep, very, very much so. Even to this day, I mean, honestly, Commander Dante, they've talked about him in the novels, but on tabletop, we've never seen his face because he wears the death mask of Sanguinius. The
Right.
the helm that was formed from the cast of the dead Primarch after Sanguinius was killed in battle with Horus aboard the Vengeful Spirit at the Battle of Terra. And
Which, I mean, he knew he saw the future though.
Mm-hmm.
He knew if he made that cut, the emperor could finish the job.
yes, and that's another thing. Sanguinius was very, very, very much a psyker. He tended to suppress his powers because more often than not, they kind of brought him grief. Because he
Yes.
could see what was coming and he could see the horrors, but he tried to ignore it. He tried to basically tell himself that it was all just in his mind. That it wasn't really visions of the future, it was his own fears and insecurities manifesting that something like that could happen.
Correct. And everything he saw, he never told anyone of it because he knew that, you know, his captains, his brothers, everybody, he knew the outcome, and he trusted them to follow through, with what he saw, and everything that he saw, it happened.
Yeah.
And he's been saved multiple times, facing against demons and chaos and everything else.
Yep. And that was Sanguinius is just he was the most perfect of the Primarchs. He was the most noble of the Primarchs. But he also had such a flaw that he could be the most savage and destructive of the Primarchs.
Oh yeah,
He was the extremes
he killed a
inwardly.
keeper of secrets with one throw of his sword
Mm-hmm.
after he came out of his psychic coma that he was rescued from, and then took down the biggest, baddest bloodthirster that the Imperium had ever seen in like
Yes.
10 seconds.
Yes. The dreaded Kabanda. Oh,
Yeah.
God. Screw
Oh,
that dude.
yeah. By the way, people listening, if you've never read Fear to Tread, read it. By far one of
Fantastic.
the best Horse Heresy books.
Absolutely fantastic novel. Let's see. So we've.
I wanted to bring up one Primarch that to me just seems like a total douchebag.
Hit
The
me.
name of Lionel Johnson.
Yes. Yes. Um God, he had so many issues, man. And he was such a conflicting character because he had nobility, he had honor, but at the same time he was distrustful of even his best lieutenants. His second in command, Luther, he wound up becoming envious of because his own legion began to love Luther more than they loved him, and ultimately that was why he was banished more or less to Caliban, their homeworld.
Hmm?
And even when Luther was doing everything he could to please Lionel Johnson, I mean, he had the highest success rate of Space Marine recruitment. He was replenishing the Legion's numbers, I think, 3 or 4 times faster than they were taking losses, which was unheard of with the
That's
expeditionary fleets.
insane. And
Yes.
the feud between the Dark Angels and the Space Wolves is just uncanny. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard the stories, they wrestled around, blah blah blah. You know, two sucker punches were thrown. One was by Russ, one was by Johnson. And Johnson's was thrown after they rolled around and fought. Russ got up, laughed, and said, huh, "That was fun." And then Lionel Johnson just proceeds to hit him over the back of the head. Yeah, I can't respect that guy.
No.
He's a prick. And another thing is, everybody was on the way to Terra for the Battle of Terra. What happened to the Dark Angels? How come they never made it? They left before the Blood Angels did.
Right. I think we're finally gonna find out what happened. Now that the siege of Terra is upon us, the Solar War is going on right now with Black Library Horse Heresy stuff. I'm excited to see why. I'm excited to see when the stuff goes down with the treason on Caliban, because it is. I mean, it's a planet that is literally bathed in the energy of chaos
Right.
constantly, and that's
24/7.
always like you could set your chicken out at night, and by the morning it was filled up with so much chaos energy. It was this giant basilisk cockatrice demon.
Pretty much a spawn.
Yeah, yeah.
Within a night, you'd wake up, you'd have a chaos spawn cooped up, ready to kill you.
Yes. Yeah, and very angry about being left in the coop. That's but
Like I said, I'm not a Lionel Johnson fan. Just his whole demeanor about everything. He really didn't care about what was going on, during the Horse Heresy. From reading all the Horse Heresy books,
right.
he, you know, he would give his input, but he would never give his like firm decision on what he was going to do or where he was going to go. He would kind of just show up at different places. And like I said, the fact that he didn't make it to Terra when he was one of the first of the legions, the Dark Angels, on the way there, and nobody showed up. The Space Wolves made it. The Blood Angels made it.
Right.
The Imperial Fists were already there, and the other Imperial Fists made it. I mean, that raises a lot of white flags right there.
Well, that's a yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, it really does make you wonder just where their loyalties ultimately wound up lying. As far as that goes.
Now, I will say this though, in a I forgot the name of the book. I forgot it back in the other room. Lionel Johnson did sneak on to a planet that the Space Wolves were on, and he was knocked out by Ragnar Blackmane, which I thought was hilarious. Uh, Ragnar and his team were there hunting the demons. Well, the Dark Angels showed up without telling anybody. Well, of course, with their keen senses, they picked up on them and followed them into these tunnels. And Lionel Johnson got the best of them, and then Ragnar blacked out and got the rage. And he said when he woke up, he was bashing Lionel Johnson's head against the floor, and he just let up.
Oh damn!
Yeah,
Like, are we talking? Are we talking M41 Ragnar Blackmane?
I would say I think this was probably M40, M39.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So then this would fall in with like the old Space Wolf novels, right? This is the same series.
Yes. Yes. Like I said, this is after Ragnar had been, sent to Earth. Because
Okay.
half the Space Wolves hated him for throwing the spear of rust into Magnus's eye,
Right.
and the other half celebrated it because he saved them.
Right.
And he was sent there on the Space Wolves' behalf. Well, then there was a problem, and they sent Ragnar and his team to a planet where there was a demon invasion, which it ultimately ended up being, of course, the leader of the entire planet was corrupted. And of course, they figured it out. But like I said, Lionel Johnson snuck down there with, I think it was maybe 20 Dark Angels without telling anybody in the Imperium. And Ragnar saw him and thought he was seeing things and sniffed them out and followed them down in these tunnels they were trying to take. And they ambushed them. And like I said, Lionel Johnson pretty much got the best of them like the first half. And then Ragnar says he blacked out. And apparently he ends up getting the best of him. He's like, the next thing he remembers, he's coming to and he's beating Lionel Johnson's head against the floor. Boom, 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 boom. And he lets up, and they have all the Dark Angels held at gunpoint, or at sword, or fist and hammers, and they walk them back, and they finally sell everything. Like, what are y'all doing here? And every time they meet, a captain on captain fight has to happen.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
after that, Lionel Johnson didn't let that happen because he just got bested in front of his own people by someone who went from Bloodclaw to Wolflord.
Right. Yeah, there was no phase as a Grey Hunter or anything like that. No, he didn't.
He went to Wolfguard for maybe 200 years.
Yeah. Which, anybody that's not familiar with Warhammer 40k lore, that is nothing to a Space Marine. That's like a 10-year stint.
Yeah, I mean, to even make it to Wolfguard, you're up to put in 1,000 years to get up there.
It's a good long while, and that's another cool thing about Space Wolves. They are very, very long lived. I think the most long lived Space Marines, just as far as survivability and everything, and not showing any signs of real aging. It goes to Blood Angels. Because I think Dante, I think he's coming up on like 12 or 1300 years now.
Right.
And like 800 of that, he's been the chapter master. And he wasn't even selected really as the chapter master. It was just after a horrific mission gone wrong, he was a sergeant, but everybody else died. Like all of the Blood Angels High Command was gone. So him being the most experienced survivor is pretty much a, oh yeah, give it to that guy.
Who here has over 100 years battle experience? Raise your hands.
It's like just Dante.
Yeah, you see the one hand come up in the back. You're chapter master.
Congratulations! Come drink from the cup.
Yeah. Don't give in. Don't give in.
No, God, that's the big one. All right, well let's talk a minute about Rogel Dorn, because we kind of touched on him a little bit earlier, but he's just such a wicked Primarch, man. He's absolutely hilarious.
He's the most blunt, stern person of all the Primarchs. Like, what's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong, and there is absolutely no in between. And when he sets his mind to something, he's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And their teachings in the Imperial Fist are so insane, like how they pick, because they don't have just one home world. Like they found Dorn, on Inwit, but he had already conquered that planet.
Right.
He had already had his ship in space
Mm-hmm.
by the time the Emperor showed up. And like I said, they go around from planet to planet to planet, finding all these young warriors, at young ages from, 11 to 15 years old, in that area. And they put them through the most brutal, training things, especially when it comes to the Pain Glove.
Yes. Oh.
And, 93% of them don't make it through.
Yeah. Yeah, they have one of the lowest recruitment rates, but the or as far as recruit survival rates, but they bring in so many recruits because they go to so many different worlds and they have such a large selection pool, they can keep their numbers up.
Right. But I love, like I said, Dorn was the right-hand man of the Emperor. Leman Russ was the left.
Yes. Yes. Dorn was the shield, and Leman was the axe.
That's it. And that really, really put a stick up Perturabo's butt.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, we probably need to talk about Perturabo too.
Yeah,
the guy dig holes.
The Dorn Perturabo conflict is, it's anybody knows who can build something better that's invincible to, get into, or who's better at going into that invincible place and, tearing it down.
Right.
Well, Dorn was picked for a reason. And even when he, made that stupid decision after, the Emperor was put in the chair, when he went after the Iron Warriors, he sacrificed half of his entire legion.
Yes. Just
to prove his point that he could get in there, and he killed them.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, the story of Lysander. Oh my gosh, what he went through to get off there without being corrupted was insane. I mean, you read the book. I gave it to you after I read it.
Yes.
Like I said, and that's what the entire Imperial Fist are based on. Like, you never give in to anything, but you win at all costs.
Yes. They are just so stoic and stalwart about what they have to do. There's no compromise with them. if they say we're going to break this wall, they will stay there for a century until they break that wall.
Yeah, you could tell them, hey, behind that wall is, Ultramarines. Doesn't matter. We're going to break that wall.
Yep. We have committed to it, and it shall be done.
And it will be done. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm. And
but Rogel Dorn was, like I said, by far the most stern, just like the planet he comes from, Inuit man out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he was picked as the right-hand man. I mean,
yes,
he is one of few of the Primarchs that the Emperor, showed up to when he was getting all his sons together, who had already not only conquered the planet, conquered all the planets and moons around it in the same amount of time that the other ones had barely become kings. And that it just said, tons about him. I mean, they still fly his original ship, 12,000 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that shows what kind of person he was.
Yeah. The Phalanx broke a black fortress.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about some epic level stuff, man. Oh my God. That's one volley cracked it. Done. And of course then they pushed it with other ships into Cadia, but you win some, you lose some. You gotta take the good with the bad.
I mean, and he killed Alfarius. That was always, everybody's like, did he though? And no, he did.
Yeah, he straight up did.
Killed Alfarius. Because at the end of the book, in the Horus Heresy, they go to Omegon and they tell him Alfarius is dead, and that's when Omegon says, I am Alfarius.
Yes.
Everybody is Alfarius now.
And that's
nobody shall know Alfarius is dead. Everybody is Alfarius.
And a fantastic transition. Let's talk about Alfarius and Omegon for just a minute. Because Twin Primarchs is really, really, really cool when you think about it.
Yeah, that's a very, very neat concept.
And it
very, very awesome. And I don't know if I'm sure you've seen the Forge World model for Alfarius.
Yes,
it is amazing.
That is one of the best models. I
have an Alpha Legion army, and I want
one. It's so good looking, man. It's such a great model.
But the story of the Alpha Legion, they really never chose a side. They were approached by Eldrad. And Eldrad told them, look, if Chaos, wins this, mankind will fall, but eventually mankind comes back and wins the whole universe back. If mankind wins, Chaos will fall, but eventually we'll come back and take over the universe. It depends on what side y'all go on. They chose neither.
Right.
And so it left it really unknown.
Yeah.
On who's going to come out victorious, and which just it puts a big question mark out there, and it really makes you think about how the Alpha Legion is. Like when you're presented with like A or B, who do I want to win? And they chose, well, neither.
Yeah. And that was one of the cool things about that is Alfarius was kind of gung-ho about, okay, well, let's go against the Imperium. Let's take them down then.
Right.
We'll take out Chaos. And Omegon was like, wait a minute, brother. Maybe we can think this out. Maybe there's an alternate path. And that was really, early on, you could definitely see Alfarius, he is in charge fully. And he was the dominant twin.
Oh, absolutely.
He was the dominant one. He was leading them, and when he passed away and Omegon took over as Alfarius, it changed everything. It completely switched it up, and their battle cry is still for the Emperor. Well, is that ironic? Is that a taunt? Or is that genuine? Or is it just something they say? Because even now they do stuff like there was a chapter called the Crimson Templars, I believe, or the maybe the Crimson Praetors. It's something, anyways, that was completely wiped out by the Alpha Legion by indoctrination of recruits that were to be selected for the Crimson Templars. And essentially when they received these little signals, whether it was, a glyph on a wall or something like that, they basically burst into demons.
Yeah, they never choose sides. They just they fight for what side they think is right.
Yes.
It depends on the situation.
Yes, and they've screwed over other Chaos chapters, other Chaos Legions, man. And that's exactly right. They fight for the Alpha Legion,
and they also tried to assassinate Gilliman.
Yes,
I mean, like I said, that they fight for themselves, and that's what makes me think that they have some sort of, everybody sees them as like just plain Jane Chaos Marines. There's something different about them, because why would you fight with Dark Angels, one battle, and then fight with World Eaters on the other? There's got to be a reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
Like I said, when you're approached by the most powerful psyker in the universe, Eldrad, who says, if you do this, this wins, but ultimately in the end, this wins.
Right.
And vice versa. And they told him, well, you know what? We're not doing either. Let's see how it plays out.
Right.
Like I said, they really didn't choose a side. Like I said, it was kind of like Courage. Courage really didn't choose a side. He's just like, screw this. I'm going to go do my own thing. First thing I'm going to do is blow up my planet.
Yeah. Let me go kill everybody.
After that, I'm just going to go murder people who get in my way.
Yep. Oh, God.
Like I said, the Alpha Legion, they always have a big question mark on them.
This is very true. And I just want to say something real quick.
Screw Lorgar.
I am Alfarius.
My name's Lorgar.
Oh God, I hate Lorgar.
I love my daddy.
Do we really need to discuss Lorgar and Gilliman, because they're kind of the flip sides of the coins there?
No.
It's
absolutely not. The only thing we can discuss about Lorgar is when he was discovered, the planet he grew up and conquered, they worshiped chaos demons. They just didn't know that it was chaos.
Yeah.
Emperor took him in, and then he tried to worship the Emperor as God, and the Emperor told him, no, I'm not a god. Quit doing this. Like, I'm sending you here to cleanse these planets, not turn them into a monument to me.
Yeah.
And Gilliman is exactly like you said. He's the same, but the opposite. But he does the same exact thing. Everything has to be perfect.
Yeah. God,
for daddy.
It's so true.
Those are the two Primarchs. It's like,
practical. I do this to make the Imperium
better. The ultimate turn of Horus was because of Lorgar. He was like, hey, look, you know what I mean? These gods I used to worship, they're talking to me now. I can make you a lot stronger, and we can get rid of this guy and put you on the throne. All you got to do is accept them. It was pretty easy, and it's like I said. And when you do that, it's easy to say, "Hey, Angron, I know you're mad at Dad. You join us, we can get rid of him, and you can do what you want." Yeah, I mean, it's that easy. Like I said, the only ones that didn't fall for all that, like I said, was Kurz, because he didn't care. He just did what he wanted.
Yeah.
And Magnus was pushed to the limit to where he had to.
Yeah. So, you mentioned Horus, and I suppose it's time to talk about the last one we really haven't spoken on much.
Yes.
The first of the Primarchs discovered, chapter master of the Luna Wolves, later the Sons of Horus, or
yep.
or the Primarch of them, Horus Lupercal. Now, this dude is bad, like straight up. Horus was he was a raw dude, like fighting prowess.
When it came to who was going to be the War Master, Horus said Sanguinus. Sanguinus said Horus.
Yes.
And the Emperor, who everybody knows, has the strongest psychic abilities and can probably has futuristic sights of everything, and took the chance and made it Horus.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sadly it became the wrong chance.
Yeah, that was a bit of a bad call, Biggie.
But as far as just Horus himself, oh yes, he was one of the baddest of the bad.
Yes. And honestly, if it hadn't been him turning to chaos, it probably only would have been like 2, maybe 3 legions that turned traitor. It definitely would have been the Night Lords, just because they were all knucking foots. The Word Bearers for sure, because worshiping chaos, not going to end well.
Exactly. I mean, they started out worshiping chaos.
Yeah. And the World Eaters, because Angron hated the Emperor. He was pretty freaking psychotic. And he made his entire legion psychotic by forcing them to go through the same thing he did.
And just a quick note, probably Perturabo, which we barely brought up, except for the, whole thing against him and the Imperial Fist. But
yeah, well, Perturabo digs holes, so.
But, yeah, the fact that Dorn was chosen and not him, he would have went too. So I would say 4 would have went.
So 4 versus 9 turning traitor. And we'll jump on to Perturabo too. Let's with Horus's thing, his unique abilities was his charisma. His ability to talk to people and make them respect him just from a conversation.
Absolutely.
This was a man who could talk to an enemy who, up until 30 minutes before, was intent on wiping out the Luna Wolves that had landed on his planet, and he could convince them that, no, we are here for peace. We are armed and ready for war because that may be required, but if we can have a peaceful resolution, if you can walk side by side with me in brotherhood and camaraderie, I would much rather have that. He was a great orator, very intelligent, very charismatic, and he was also very manipulative.
Yes,
and
very manipulative. That was like his main thing. Like you said, he could talk you into surrendering without making you think, that it's him doing it.
Yes.
But he could get in your head.
Yeah, and you see that with the Mournival, with his 4 of his captains that would kind of act as his counsel. He would have them be the aggressors, calling for conflict, calling for orbital bombardment, and he would kind of be the voice of reason, like, whoa, wait a minute, guys. Let's not be too rash here. Maybe we can find some peace. Maybe, we could negotiate a ceasefire and have everything go smoothly. And the enemy would see that, and they'd be like, oh, this guy, yeah, he holds them in check. These captains, these Astartes, they're savage and bloodthirsty, but with this man leading them, I mean, they bow to his will, so maybe there's hope. Maybe, maybe we can actually do some business here. Very, very intelligent, and that's what made him a good war master. That's ultimately what made him the best pick for the job.
Absolutely.
I would have said Sanguinius would have been the best pick, but he knew with his flaw, his rage, that would manifest itself. He was, number one, he was worried that other people would find out about it because he had passed it on to his sons, and there had already been 2 legions and 2 Primarchs essentially wiped out because of one reason or another. And not only wiped out, their entire existence stricken from the records.
Yeah, I mean, how do you think the Ultramarines got so big?
Yeah. That little mention in the Horus Heresy, the first 3 books. Yeah, that was a nice little thing right there. That was pretty clever.
That was a good little nod, little puzzle piece they put in there that's a lot of people don't catch, but most people know about.
Right. And then let's see. Got Horus. Let's talk for a minute about Perturabo, because we talk a lot of crap on him, but he's actually kind of a cool Primarch when you break it down, because this is a guy who took over his legion. He basically looked over their victory record and said, not good enough. Not good enough. And he literally had his legion decimate itself. 1 out of every 10 Astartes was killed by their brothers, teaching them a lesson. That you're not good enough now. You will be good enough.
Well,
you
like
will.
Just like Dorn did with all his recruits. Like, you're going to make it or you're not.
Yep.
It's one or the other.
Yep. And that's another great thing about the Primarchs. Each one of them, when you match them up to each other, they're a mirror image. It's one, you can see the darkness in one and the light in another, but you also still see that little bit of darkness in the good and that little bit of light in the wicked. And it's wonderful. GW has done a great job with the Horus Heresy. They've done a fantastic job fleshing all these guys out. But Perturabo is very much like Dorn. He is more of an artisan. He loved making beautiful things. He loved making grand sculptures and palaces and things like that.
That were not impenetrable.
No. He did not want to be a warrior on Olympia. But his father, the tyrant, literally called the Tyrant of Olympia, forced him to be that for him. And he thought that when the Emperor came and took him away from the tyrant, he thought he would have a chance to actually do what he wanted. And then he grew bitter very quickly when he realized that the Emperor was just going to do with him what the tyrant had done. He was going to make him a weapon of war. And he didn't care about his artistry. He didn't care that he enjoyed making beautiful things. He enjoyed what peace could bring. He just wanted him as a siege master.
Exactly.
And that was one of the big things that turned him against the Emperor, and really he saw him as a tyrant pretty early on. But he was just like, what am I going to do? Might as well do something, So, but he turned quick.
Won't have me. Yeah. Horus will.
Yes, that was another thing. Horus promising him a change, promising him that he would honor his skills, that he would not just send him into the meat grinder and expect, an assault that would last a year for other chapters to only take 3 months for him, and if he went 3 months and a day, he gets chewed out. He wasn't going to do that to him. And Perturabo was kind of a needy little bitch.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he got so butthurt when he was chosen not to reinforce the Grand Palace.
Yeah. When he was chosen to be the field siege master instead of Dorn, when Dorn was chosen to be the Imperial Architect and the Sentinel of Terra, the Praetorian of Terra. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of butthurt over that. He got a little mad. That was.
That's why when Horus turned, he knew. He's like, "Oh, I got this guy."
Yeah.
He's already got hatred toward Dorn, who is, like I said, literally the Emperor's right hand man.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I got a chance to best him in front of my father.
Yeah.
But like I said, I do like Perturabo. It's just the thing about all the traitor Primarchs. All of them are demons now,
Yes. Yes. And one of
except
them,
except Kurz because he's
he
dead.
dead. He's straight up dead. He's gone. And the dead Primarchs, you've got Ferrus Manus, you've got Sanguinius, and you've got Conrad Kurz. So already, the Loyalist Primarchs are in a bad way in comparison to the Chaos Primarchs because they're at 8, and the Loyalists are at 7.
Horus is gone too. Though.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forget about Horus. Now, they have cloned him before.
Yeah, look at Abaddon. He is literally he's supposed to be the clone of Horus. And if anybody listening hasn't seen the new model or the new rules for them, they embrace that.
And that's the neat thing. Is he a clone? Is he not? They've never said definitively if he's not or if he is. So that's always going to kind of hang around, and I like that. I like that little bit of mystery. Is he some kind of, not a perfect clone, but is he, more or less like a Solid Snake in the Metal Gear series, with Big Boss? He's kind of cloned from him, but he's not the exact same.
I mean, yeah, exactly. He is, but he isn't.
Yeah, so that's really neat stuff, and I love the concepts like that. And oh gosh, well, since we're already on Traitor Primarchs, we've only got one more to discuss, and that is Big Papa Nurgle's Primarch.
Mortarion.
Yes, that's right. Mortarion. Child of Death. Oh.
The man who became the thing he hated the most.
Oh, gosh, yes. A frickin' sorcerer. Mortarion is, he's a little bit of an asshole. Did not like the Emperor from the start, because when he was about to kill his adoptive father, who was a sorcerer, lived far, far up in this just crazy mountain castle where the air was thick with poison. Even so much that a Primarch could not handle it. A Primarch could not survive it, yet this sorceress thing could. He climbed up, he made his way to kill his father, and then right at the doors to his fortress, he collapsed. And he just sees this flash of light before he passes out, and it's the Emperor, and he's striding in, and he goes in and kills his adoptive father. And took that from Mortarion. So he always had resentment toward the Emperor. And it was based on the deal. The Emperor had come to him the day before, and they'd reached an agreement. If Mortarion couldn't kill him, if Mortarion couldn't kill his adoptive father, then he would serve the Emperor. That was the deal. And Mortarion failed, and he wound up serving the Emperor.
Right. Well, like we were saying, like I just said, he became what he hated the most.
Exactly.
Like when it came to, the whole Nakia, thing, him and Lehman Russ were the first two to stand up and say, "Hell no." Like,
Yes.
We do not mess with this kind of stuff, this kind of magic.
No,
even though Lehman Russ had Rune Priest, but that's not magic.
No, it's just the powers of Fenris.
Yeah, that's the powers of Fenris. He throws a bunch of bones on the ground and tells you what to do.
Yeah.
That's not magic at all.
He's not sitting there reading books. Oh gosh.
But I mean, that, like you were just discussing, that was his reason on joining the other side, because he resented the Emperor for doing what he couldn't do.
Yep. That was a big cause of it. And Mortarion like after that event, he had to wear the gas mask pretty much constantly to supply him, with good air and good oxygen. Because his lungs had just been so ravaged by that toxic cloud, he really.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, that was the whole planet of Barbarous was toxic, and like you
Yes.
said, the mountaintop that you're talking about was the most toxic part.
Yes.
And like you were saying, not even a Primarch could get up there to slay the beast
Right.
that he hated the most, which was his aka stepfather at the time.
Yes. Yeah. Daddy number 2. But I give it to Mortarion. That dude was tough as all get out, and his chapter probably had the biggest split. Because there were still a lot of Terran Death Guard left within the Legion. And I keep saying chapter. If I say chapter when I'm talking about the Primarchs, I mean Legion, guys. Forgive me. But yeah, still had a ton of Terrans left. Nathaniel Garrow and all of the Terrans that turned with him against the Barbarossi Death Guard. Like Typhon, Captain Typhon, and the others.
Right.
And
Well, the thing is though, is the ones that didn't stand against him. I mean, the first Grey Knight was a Nurgle descendant.
yes, one of them was
a Death Guard.
Nathaniel Garrow. Yeah,
Yes, Nathaniel Garrow. That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
He was the first Grey Knight because he stood with Mortarion's first beliefs that we do not tolerate psychic powers, demons, the warp, anything of the sort.
Right.
And he made it his solemn duty not to do it and started the Grey Knights.
And now they're all about the psychic powers, but they're still fully anti-demon, but they're like, yeah, we kind of got to use the powers of the warp to beat the powers of the warp. We kind of realize that now.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, not sorry.
It's like, but first, let me open my arm and put this silver scroll with holy writing up under my flesh. That way, if something grabs me, it'll be burning like fire. But, yeah, and I gotta say, Mortarion, his model. I like his Horus Heresy model, the Forge World model, so much more than I like the new 40K model. It's just the new 40K model is so busy. There's so much going on.
It really is. I mean, there's like the new Magnus model is great.
Yes.
Of course, nobody likes the booby horns. Most people don't even put them on there.
King of nipples.
I'm glad they made them optional.
Yep.
But yeah, the Mortarion model, like you said, it just has too much going on it.
Yes.
It's
absolutely.
a great model, no doubt about it. But there's just too much going on. And like you said, the Forge World 30K model of it is phenomenal. I mean, all the Primarch models are really good, except I would say Gilliman and Lorgar. I would say,
of course.
Their models, well, they're just too basic.
They are. There's no dynamism to them. Even Horus, he's kind of in a relaxed pose, but the way he's holding Worldbreaker and the way he's got the talon out,
and
it exudes
his
power.
Is really what makes his model that much better.
Yes. Very, very true. And plus with Mortarion, when you get bitched out by your first captain and basically told, you don't give me orders, Nurgle gives me orders because I am his herald and I turned you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, guy.
It's kind of like, yeah, you don't really lead your legion, do you, pal? But
yeah.
Oh,
that's where Mortarion should have been like, kill him.
It makes me wonder though, which Plague Marine would have been like, okay, that's tough, man, because it's the Herald of Nurgle, Typhus.
Of all the chaos, you could have joined, I would say Nurgle would be the worst.
Oh gosh. Like the best and the worst. That's the
Yeah.
thing though.
I mean, it makes you so much more tougher and not invincible,
You
but
never feel
it makes
pain
you
again.
disgusting.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it does. It makes you disgusting. Like it is awful, and I mean, that's their plus.
Yes, very, very true. And that's one thing about it. It's just you talk about disgusting, and I'm like, oh, the ladies will never love them. And then I realize, oh wait, most of them are virgins. Never mind. That's
They
a,
have they have no idea what a real man is.
right. It's like 40K. It's a setting so badass that most of the super soldiers in it are complete virgins. Bunch of Vol sales running around in power armor, just like, oh god.
Oh man.
Oh. But I think that about wraps it up on the Primarchs, man. I think we've discussed everybody in some detail. I mean, like with Khan, there's
Oh
not
yeah. I mean,
not a
yeah.
whole lot to go over with him. We talked about him a little bit. There's just not much, and I don't want to talk about Lorgar and Gilliman. Everybody pretty much knows all about them. If we have to, we'll do an update or an addendum later on. But it's just like. Lorgar ruined everything. Gilliman's a Mary Sue. Okay, there we go.
All right. Sums that up right there. That's all you need to know.
That's exactly
But
right.
anyone listening or watching, all you got to do is send us a tweet at SNS on Twitter and hit us up on Facebook.
Pleasure to do this with you, my friend. I hope you have a fantastic